Welcome back to All the Work, my restoration slash refurbishment slash awesomeification of my 1987 Ski Supreme. I am cleaning up the boat and preparing to pour foam into the stringer. Now, of course, I am making a mistake here. Instead of waking up at 5:30 in the morning and getting after it when it's nice and cool, I am trying to pour foam during a morning nap. Here's my first attempt at it, and I thought I was going to be really slick and just do a tiny amount and let it come up, and I was trying to reduce the waste. However, I actually poured too little foam in, and the foam just barely made it to the top, but then there's little gaps where it didn't make it all the way. Then I went back out an hour later when it was even warmer and tried to fix the problem doing these little Dixie cup pours, which you can see all the mess that I made, and tried doing a little bit more pouring. That wasn't on camera, kind of screwed that up. But then I got smart, abandoned that day, waited till the next morning. Here I am out there a little bit later because I don't have as much foam to pour. With the early morning foam pour, 64 degrees or whatever it was, and I'm done. It was just that easy. It was amazing how much more the foam expanded in these cool temperatures. I don't know if I stirred it up a little bit better or I kind of dialed in the procedure, but it went great. The nice thing about pouring foam in the morning is that evening I'd go right back out and start working on it. Here's my big hand saw, cutting the tops off with the foam. Pretty easy work. It's amazing how dense the foam is and how much structural integrity I think I'm going to gain in the boat from that foam. Pretty impressive. This was a little bit tricky, getting the foam out from under that little floor tab that's there. I had planned on putting plastic up under there and letting the foam go into that. That way the foam wouldn't stick to the underside of the floor. However, I kind of screwed that up in my morning day pour slash switch to the night pour, and kind of forgot what I was doing there, forgot that safety step. So I had to get under there with a sander, clean that up. Here I am with the orbital sander, really trying to clean the tops off these, get one more clean on the stringer. I want the stringer to be so clean. I don't want to get any air bubbles when I do lay fiberglass this time. So I'm trying to put as much effort and time into sanding and cleaning up and really getting this stringer ready to get fiberglassed in and looking awesome. You got to get creative in a project like this. So I've got my big paint stick and I'm wrapping it with sandpaper, and that's what I'm using to get up under that floor and sand that foam that got stuck under there when I was pouring the foam with no plastic there. Now I am putting effort into that crack under the engine mount. Just trying to do a lot of sanding there, just trying to get it cleaned up so that when it's time to fiberglass, it'll stick there and repair the damage. A little bit of vacuuming, a little more sanding. Some friends of mine, Jess and Drew, were out on a evening scooter ride and they came by to check out the boat work. I'm always happy to talk to people about the boat. I'm definitely obsessed with it at this point, so it's always fun to have someone come check it out and show them the goods. And then back to sanding. Day 30, probably about time for a midlife crisis in this project. It is actually starting to drag on me even more that the project is not coming along faster than I had hoped. But it's all part of the process. So today I am focusing on getting that brace that's going to go under the engine mount floor there, tie it all back together, and I'm just sizing it in, fitting it in. I need to bevel the side that faces the engine mount quite a bit because there's a metal bar under that floor by that engine, and I wanted to fit in there really good, and I was kind of worried that the floor wasn't going to sit level under there. However, once I beveled it, I got the same gap towards the engine as I do moving out with the floor. Then I put a few marks on the board. That's where I'm going to put that Trevea tape. That's the felt tape that will really grab a screw. So you put that on the underside of what you're trying to screw into, and then the screw will really grab and bite into it. Now it is back to sanding and really trying to get after that crack under the engine mount. I'm not sure why I'm doing all this texting at this point. I believe it was because I was trying to sell the old truck cap off of the old truck. You can see a nice silver truck there, just barely. That is my new truck. I couldn't be happier about. I am quite concerned that because the first stringer that I fiberglass mushroomed so much that it's going to be kind of wavy as it goes down and won't be a flat surface for the floor to go onto. So I wanted to see what wet sanding did. So far, all the sanding I've done on my fresh glass work has just gummed up the sandpaper and not been super effective. And so I just wanted to squirt a little soapy water on it and see if I could get a little more results sanding with a little soapy water. The results were meh. So now it's back to cleaning the entire floor cavity, this time soapy water. I am dragging a wet towel through this one. It's really hard to get clean behind that engine mount. There's really not even room to get my whole hand behind that in spots. So once again, just trying to spend enough time working on it, cleaning it, vacuuming it, washing it to get some fiberglass to stick. I am again using one of those long paint sticks to do some of the cleaning under here. I am just wrapping a paper towel around the end of it, getting it wet, running it up there, and getting one clean pull backwards with it to try and get all the dust off the floor. Now it's back to fabbing up my little brace, checking on it, making sure it works good, making some notes here, and calling it a night. Day 31 is a weekend, so I am out there in the morning trying to get some morning work, cleaning up and preparing my workspace for that day's project. What you didn't see there is me up in the boat one more time with my little engineering piece, my little brace, staring at it and realizing that it's not shaped right. It's missing a little L tab where the other part of the floor that I cut out kind of made a bad cut weeks ago needs to be modified. And so I need to make a new brace. So all that work, all that sanding, all that fabbing was for naught. So I'm completely redoing this. This is one of those times where I walk out to the garage with a plan and I'm ready to move forward and I'm going to fiberglass and I'm going to make some progress, and nope, all the way back to square one. That's a router there. I'm beveling the edges of that brace so that fiberglass will roll over the edges. A little bit of cleanup and then a little bit of sanding. I need to make that bevel onto the brace that I had worked basically that whole night on last night, 2 nights ago, getting ready. So now I have to just redo all that work. Quick trip on the boat, see how the new piece fits. A little more sanding, a little more beveling, and of course I'm making a mistake here. I should have just used the grinder and torn this thing up. However, I was trying to keep it clean using the sander, and I don't quite get enough bevel on it. I'm going to pay for that a little later. Moving into the evening, I am getting ready to fiberglass my new brace. I am going to wrap 1708 around it to try and give it some structural integrity as well as create a surface that'll bond to the rest of the boat. I did quite a bit of camera moving on this night, way more than I want to or planned on. However, it was a lot of in the boat, do a little bit of work. Here I'm actually cleaning out the back end of that outside stringer because I want to add one layer of 1708 there. That stringer had been loose from the floor and I had just laid some chop strand and some resin there, and I wasn't totally satisfied that that was going to be strong. Why would I not reinforce this while I have the boat open? So tonight I'm going to lay this 1708 here and go out and do a little bit on the brace and then come back and do a little more on the boat. I'm starting to learn to use my time a little more effectively. There's a close-up shot of my little 1708 custom roller dispenser. Back to the other side of the garage, and it is time to start laminating my brace. Now this is an interesting spot where I do make a mistake in that the fiberglassing is difficult. However, I'm not sure how I would fix it, so I don't know if it was really a mistake, but I started all the fiberglass on one side, get it wet, and then I rolled it, got the other side wet, and then I'm going to roll it again, and then ideally the fiberglass or the 1708 was going to overlap on one side, and I'd seal it up and that'll be good. Now, the way I do this, I end up with the flat side, or the side that's going to face up, and where I'm going to tie in the floors to, that ends up laying face down on the plastic overnight. I suppose I should have done the opposite, because what ends up happening is that fiberglass laying on the plastic ends up being all groovy and weird, and then I have to do a lot more sanding. I do have my head in the game a little bit, and I lay in the trivia tape. I put 2 strips on the end right next to the engine mount, and then 1 strip back where the little L tab is, because that's where the other floor piece is going to tie in. Dylan, would you like to say something? Pretty good. Here I am laying in the trivia tape over the cutouts in the stringer. The trivia tape will allow me to screw the floor down to the stringer and get a nice tight bond. I am relying on a glue called 5200 to hold the floor into place. That's actually the primary holder. However, I am going to use the screws to just really seal it in, hold it in tight, and get it really locked down in. Switch camera angles again. My editing is getting off the charts. Here I'm mixing up another batch of resin and getting ready to resin the trivia tape, get it all wetted out. It's really just like a felt tape. And then put a little chop strand over those holes. That way, when I come in with the 1708, I have a smooth stringer to lay over. Now back to the rear of the boat. I'm laying in the 1708 and shoring up the outside of this last stringer. It does feel good to be able to kind of keep multiple things going at the same time. Back of the boat, middle of the boat, trivia tape, 1708. Really feels like I'm getting my head wrapped around this project. Day 32, this is a Sunday morning. Once again, I walk into the garage and find a new issue. Right there, I flipped over my brace, and the resin where it laid on top of the plastic is just a mess. It is gobby, it is thick. It is not going to fit in the boat like this. So, quite a bit of sanding work to clean up what I had already done. Right there, I just headed into the boat, checked it, now I'm back out. Looks like I'm wet sanding it back in the boat, check it, come back out, do a little more wet sand, a little more grinding. I'm trying to move the camera around as little as possible on these mornings where I'm just doing catch-up work. Here's a quick shot of the family headed out to go play basketball while I'm doing boat work. No idea where the other kid is. Remember when I said I was going to pay for it for not beveling the brace enough? Well, here I am paying for it out in the driveway with the grinder, just getting after it, adding a tremendous amount of bevel to the brace so it'll fit in under the engine. And this is Dylan, helping me out with the morning editing process. Now I am setting up my workspace for more fiberglassing. I take a 50-gallon trash bag, cut it in half, and lay it on the passenger side. It works really well. Now I am getting cleaned up. I'm using acetone to prep the surface for a little fiberglassing. I take my yardstick and I wrap a paper towel around it and then slide it up here behind the engine mount here to clean out all the dust. It takes a while, but I think I'm getting it done. Trying to just be creative and get it cleaned up and go. Now I'm laying up the 1708 fabric that's going to go over the stringer under the engine mount here. This is going to be a really tricky layup. I'm going to have to do something a little different here. So I'm getting the trash bag out, and I'm going to wet down the 1708 on top of the trash bag. That way it's all wetted up and I don't have to pre-wet the stringer itself. I'm gonna go wetting it out, and I'm gonna slide it in, and then hopefully be able to seal it down. Now it's really flimsy when it's wet like this, so it was a little tough to get it in there at first. And now I'm packing in a little more resin and then just trying to roll out the places I got. Now at this point I was thinking I was going to seal the whole thing down and then put the brace in. However, I realized that as soon as I put the brace in, it was going to move the 1708, and whatever I had sealed down and rolled out was going to be a waste of time. So I mix up another batch of resin and start to gob it in under the stringer. I want to build up a thick layer of it. I believe I did thicken this with silica so it would stick around it. And actually, yeah, I did. So I'm pasting it onto the brace itself, slide the brace in, seal all around it with peanut butter so that it'll seal in good. And now I'm actually pasting my peanut butter onto a yardstick. And I'm going to slide the yardstick in behind the motor mounts there, and in one kind of slick move, just smush that peanut butter down the side of the 1708, try and seal it in. And I have to do that on each side of a half the distance. I actually measured so I knew exactly that I'd be in the middle, hold it in nice and carefully, and smear that peanut butter on the side, and hopefully get a good seal on the inside of the stringer, because that's all I'm going to have here. Everywhere else on all the other parts of the stringers has 2 layers of 1708, but under the engine mount I'm only able to get 1 because it's just going to be so tight. Once I had the brace in place, I realized that I really should have screwed it in. So I pull out the drill and I use a, I don't know what size bit to tap a hole, and then I have this little bevel bit so I can recess the holes, and I got 3 screws in that little panel into the thing going into the stringer underneath, and I felt pretty good about it. So then back to the 1708, start at the front, mix up a little more resin, 2 layers of 1708 up at the front, 2 layers of 1708 at the back, and hopefully a super stiff, super awesome stringer. I don't know what I've done different at this point, but the resin itself is curing darker than it was when I did the first stringer. I kind of think it's because I'm just taking a little more time and mixing the resin together before I apply it. That doesn't totally make sense, because halfway through the application on the other side, it should have darkened up if I had been doing it right. So I don't know why, but the left side stringer does appear to be darker than the right side stringer. It is great knowing that you have 24 hours in between application and the next layer of resin. That was a Ron Tanis tip. So I was able to just put the 1708 on the front of the stringer there, take a break, go hang out with the family, spend the afternoon, put the kids to bed, and now I'm back out in the boat for the evening, and I'm gonna do the 2 layers over the back. I am trying to get as much overlap between the stringer and the brace as possible. So I'd spend some time there going back and forth. Am I doing the inside of the stringer, outside of the stringer? I don't know. But I end up deciding that I'm just going to mix up some resin, put this piece on the inside, and then fold the next piece from the inside of the boat over towards the brace, and then merge the 1708 onto the brace and hopefully stiffen up the boat even more. So unfortunately the battery kicked out in the GoPro and I wasn't able to finish videoing this night. However, here is a slow-mo tour of the work that I did to get to this point. However, there's 4 days between this video and what I just finished, so there's some sanding on top and a little more prep work. What you're seeing is that I got good laminates down, the entire stringer is covered in 1708, and I'm ready for the next step, whatever that is. As it turns out, after I get everything finished and the floor back in, the next step is cutting that shape in the top of the dash jet that is going to be my in-dash cooler. Probably the coolest feature of this upgrade. Now it's time to wrap the cords up and go to bed.